Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Omar, if you happen to be a salesman in this world, and you can be selling cars, you could be selling siding, you could be selling just about anything, and you are paid on commission. So if you don't sell anything, you don't make anything. So you can have good years, you can have bad years. Probably really one of the best examples is a real estate agent.
Add that in the private sector as well, people, if they are not performing at their job, get demoted, and with that demotion comes a pay cut. And that's not even related to being in a commission position, that's just in a regular position as well. Representative Omar.
I think a commissioned position is very different than what we are discussing today.
Representative Omar, I mentioned the fact that it's not just limited to commission. It's also for anybody that is demoted. So you can be in a...
Sometimes it's the simplest question that reveals the biggest gap in understanding. In this hearing, Representative Ilhan Omar asked whether employers ever reduce employee pay and called the idea strange. What followed wasn't just an answer. It was a reality check rooted in everyday experience. Stay with me, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with Capitol Review, where we bring clarity to the conversations that matter.
I'm just wondering, are there, as a union member for a long time, and I've also gotten an opportunity to work in the private sector, and I'm curious to know if you know of any employer that has a provision where they decrease pay for employees. I find that a little strange, and so I just wanted to know where that thought comes from, and if you know where an employee gets their pay decreased.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I was a business owner. I recently sold my share, so I don't own it anymore, but there are plenty of businesses out there, especially those that depend on employees' productivity, like I was in the trades. So I owned a company that was a tile setting company, and if we didn't get out there and do the work, and if I didn't have highly productive employees, they were paid based on their productivity. So if they had issues, it is very possible that their pay would reflect those issues. If they were on probation for something, for some sort of violation, that could be coordinated with a pay reduction. It's something that businesses do all the time, and it could be the step before someone is actually fired. So it's an important thing, and it gets people's attention, when they see it in their paycheck that their performance does not meet the standard.
Representative Omar.
Hudson, I think, did you have something?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Hudson? Was there a question for Mr. Hudson?
No, I think he was saying that he wanted to add something, so I didn't know if he had something to add.
Mr. Hudson, is there a response to the question? Do you have a response to that question?
Madam Chair, yes, ma'am.
Are you saying that you aren't aware of any businesses that decrease pay? Because that was the question.
Madam Chair, I think what Chair O'Neill perhaps could be referring to, there are some instances where the pay structure is different. So for an example, she had indicated that she had come out of the towel industry. I'm not sure if these were commissioned employees who may have been on like an 80-20 split. In that instance, there is a situation where a pay might be reduced. Or if we have a supervisor who perhaps had a performance improvement issue or a behavioral concern, and we demoted this supervisor, that is an instance where pay might be decreased. But just an employee who has not been under some sort of performance improvement program, having their pay reduced, I've never heard of that.
Well, Mr. Hudson, I think Representative Neal knows exactly what she says. And I think we've had a little conversation back here when the question was asked. I know Representative Uglem, do you want to speak to that point?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Omar, if you happen to be a salesman in this world, and you can be selling cars, You could be selling siding. You could be selling just about anything, and you are paid on commission. So if you don't sell anything, you don't make anything. So you can have good years, you can have bad years. Probably really one of the best examples is a real estate agent. So it's the idea that people can make less money year to year, not to mention all the bonus situations that are out there in industry. It happens. It happens a lot. It doesn't necessarily happen, here in the public sector, but it's pervasive and very, very common in the private sector. Thank you.
And I'd like to add that in the private sector as well, people, if they are not performing at their job, get demoted, and with that demotion comes a pay cut. And that's not even related to being in a commission position, that's just in a regular position as well. Representative Omar.
I think a commissioned position is very different than what we are discussing today.
Representative Omar, I mentioned the fact that it's not just limited to commission. It's also for anybody that is demoted. So you can be in a regular job, not part of a commission situation, but if you're failing to perform, you'll get demoted, and then you get a pay cut with.
I've listened to a lot of hearings over the years, and I can tell you this. Every now and then, a moment comes along that says more than the entire agenda put together. This was one of those moments. Representative Ilhan Omar asked a question that sounded simple. Do employers actually reduce employee pay? And she described it as strange. But here's the thing. What feels strange in one world is standard practice in another. Representative Barb O'Neill responded not with theory, but with experience. The kind of experience you only get when you've built something, managed people, and had to make tough decisions to keep the doors open. She explained that in many industries, especially in the trades, pay is tied to productivity. If the output drops, the earnings can reflect that, not as punishment, but as accountability. There's an old proverb that says, "The hand that tills the land determines the harvest." In other words, results matter. And that principle doesn't live in textbooks. It lives in the real world, in workshops, in sales floors, in small businesses where every dollar has a purpose. Then came another layer to the conversation, demotion. A witness explained that when someone moves from a higher role to a lower one due to performance or conduct, their pay often follows that change. And let's be honest for a moment. Can responsibility go down while pay stays the same? As the saying goes, you can't climb down the ladder and expect to stand taller. Then the discussion turned to something even more familiar, commission-based work, sales jobs, real estate, the kind of roles where your paycheck isn't fixed, it's earned. You perform, you gain. You don't, you feel the difference. Simple, direct, real. Another proverb comes to mind here. A day's harvest depends on the day's labor. For millions of people, that's not philosophy, it's survival. And this is where the moment really took shape, because what we were witnessing wasn't just a disagreement, it was a contrast of perspectives, one shaped largely by structured systems where pay is steady, the other shaped by a performance-driven environment where income moves with effort, results, and responsibility. Now, here's my honest take after years of observing these conversations. When you haven't walked a path, it's easy to question the footprints. And that's what this felt like. Even after multiple explanations, the pushback remained. And that tells you something important, not just about this exchange, but about a broader disconnect that can exist between policy discussions and everyday economic reality. Because for many watching, this wasn't new information. This was life. This was how bills get paid, how businesses survive, how effort turns into income. And one thing I've learned is this. Reality doesn't adjust itself to our understanding. We have to adjust to it. That's the lesson sitting quietly underneath this entire exchange. In the end, this wasn't just about paychecks. It was about perspective. A single question opened the door to a much bigger conversation about how the real world actually works. And moments like this remind us why understanding matters. If you value clear, grounded breakdowns like this, like, subscribe, and share with Capital Review, where we turn complex moments into simple truth.